So very welcome and good evening. For this evening's chanting, we can do the evening chanting in English, starting on page 19 of the dark brown chanting book. So page 19. To the Blessed One, the Lord who fully attained perfect enlightenment, to the teaching which he expounded so well, and to the Blessed One's disciples who have practiced well, to these the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha, we render with offerings our rightful homage. It is well for us that the Blessed One, having attained liberation, still had compassion for later generations. May these simple offerings be accepted for our long-lasting benefit and for the happiness it gives us. The Lord, the perfectly enlightened and Blessed One, I render homage to the Buddha, the Blessed One. The teaching so completely explained by him, I bow to the Dhamma. The Blessed One's disciples who have practiced well, I bow to the Sangha. Now let us pay preliminary homage to the Buddha. Homage to the Blessed, Noble, and Perfectly Enlightened One. Homage to the Blessed, Noble, and Perfectly Enlightened One. Homage to the Blessed, Noble, and Perfectly Enlightened One. Now let us chant a recollection of the Buddha. A good word of the Blessed One's reputation has spread as follows. He, the Blessed One, is indeed the Pure One, the perfectly enlightened One. He is impeccable in conduct and understanding, the accomplished One, the knower of the worlds. He trains perfectly those who wish to be trained. He is teacher of gods and humans. He is awake and holy. Now let us chant the supreme praise of the Buddha. The Buddha, the truly worthy one, endowed with such excellent qualities, whose being is composed of purity, transcendental wisdom and compassion, who has enlightened the wise like the sun, awakening the lotus. I bow my head to that peaceful chief of conquerors, the Buddha, who is the safe, secure refuge of all beings, as the first object of recollection. I venerate him with bowed head. I am indeed the Buddha's servant. The Buddha is my Lord and guide. The Buddha is sorrow's destroyer, who bestows blessings on me. To the Buddha I dedicate its body and life, and in devotion I will walk the Buddha's path of awakening. For me there is no other refuge. The Buddha is my excellent refuge. By the utterance of this truth, may I grow in the Master's way. By my devotion to the Buddha and the blessing of this practice, by its power, may all obstacles be overcome.
My body speaks for my whatever wrong actions committed towards the Buddha may have none and the fault be accepted, but in future the never restraint and the guidance of the Buddha.
Now let us chant the recollection of the Dhamma. The Dhamma is well expounded by the Blessed One, apparent here and now, timeless, encouraging investigation, leading inwards to be experienced individually by the wise. Now let us chant the supreme praise of the Dhamma. It is excellent because it is well expounded, and it can be divided into path and fruit, learning and liberation. The Dhamma holds those who uphold it from falling into delusion. I revere the excellent teaching, that which removes darkness, the Dhamma which is the supreme, secure refuge of all beings. As the second object of recollection, I venerate it with bowed head. I am indeed the Dhamma's servant. The Dhamma is my Lord and guide. The Dhamma is sorrow's destroyer, and it bestows blessings on me. To the Dhamma I dedicate this body and life, and in devotion I will walk this excellent way of truth. For me there is no other refuge. The Dhamma is my excellent refuge. By the utterance of this truth, may I grow in the Master's way. By my devotion to the Dhamma and the blessing of this practice, by its power, may all obstacles be overcome.
My body, speech, or mouth, whatever wrong action committed towards the Dhamma may have none and the fault be accepted, but in future the never restraint regarding the Dhamma.
Now let us chant a recollection of the Sangha. They are the Blessed One's disciples who have practiced well, who have practiced directly, who have practiced insightfully, those who practice with integrity. That is the 4 pairs, the 8 kinds of noble beings. These are the Blessed One's disciples. Such ones are worthy of gifts. worthy of hospitality, worthy of offerings, worthy of respect. They give occasion for incomparable goodness to arise in the world. Now let us chant the supreme praise of the Sangha. Born of the Dhamma, that Sangha which has practiced well, the field of the Sangha formed of 8 kinds of noble beings, guided in body and mind by excellent morality and virtue. I revere that assembly of noble beings, perfected in purity, the Sangha which is the supreme, secure refuge of all beings, as the third object of recollection. I venerate it with bowed head. I am indeed the Sangha's servant. The Sangha is my Lord and guide. The Sangha is sorrow's destroyer, and it bestows blessings on me. To the Sangha I dedicate this body and life, and in devotion I will walk the well-practiced way of the Sangha. For me there is no other refuge. The Sangha is my excellent refuge. By the utterance of this truth, may I grow in the Master's way. By my devotion to the Sangha and the blessing of this practice, by its power, may all obstacles be overcome.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. We're a couple of weeks into the annual 3-month rains retreat. This is the monsoon rains retreat. We're following the calendar of our tradition, which was, obviously established in Asia, particularly South Asia. And so it's a time of year that we treat differently. We've got different rules, particularly around traveling, but it's also a time to cultivate more formal practice and also the study of the monastic code. And so the community in this last week, at least the male community, have begun formal classes twice a week, study classes. And also we've had group practice, and people are on solitary retreat. That's why the monastic community is greatly reduced tonight, because there's about, about 8 people on retreat. So it's a special time of year for this, for us. And but otherwise things continue as normal, including all the talks and other things that we do here. I was reflecting this afternoon, what maybe could be potentially useful to share, to choose a topic, something that either I've been working on myself more in a more focused way, or just something I want to focus on. And so I'm going to reflect on teaching one of the foundational teachings of the Buddha, and it's often referred to in English as the 8 worldly winds. The 8 worldly winds, or the 8 worldly conditions is another way it's referred to. And as we know, unless Theravada Buddhism is brand new to us, this tradition is quite well known for its lists. It's got these lists of ways to reflect on experience, and they're meant to be useful. It was an oral tradition. It also made it very. It helped to be able to remember, because when something's in a list, for most of us, it's easier to memorize that, because these things were not written down for several hundred years. And so this list of 8 worldly winds, and there are various translations, like just about all the canon, and that's, I find, quite useful, because sometimes a different translation can shed light on things. But I'll just read out one particular translation. So it's gain and loss, status and disgrace, censure and praise, pleasure and pain. So, and now I'll just add in maybe slightly different. So we got gain and loss. That's very easy. I think that's probably the most standard translation. Status and disgrace is sometimes fame and disrepute is another way that is commonly referred to. Censure and praise is praise and blame is usually blaming and praising. And then pleasure and pain is also very straightforward. So you can see there are these 2 opposites. You've got it's got 8 aspects of 4 basic these 4 basic pairs. And then, like I said a moment ago, it's meant to be a useful way to reflect on our own experience of being a human being. And what the Buddha, when he presented this, he wasn't saying that you just try and get rid of the sort of, let's say, the negative spectrum. He's saying that nobody escapes these, that there is no one that will escape these 8 worldly winds in terms of experience, that we won't experience them, but the escape is in transcending the 8 worldly winds, in abiding in the equanimous heart and mind that can experience the worldly winds. They will, and there's this image of the wind of blowing. These things blow into our lives. They blow, and like some wind, it buffets us. It rattles us. It shakes us. It's harder to endure. Like in a strong wind, we need to lean into it. If there's very soft wind, it's much easier to endure. It's not a problem as such. So it's an interesting image, these winds, and that. Yeah, and just to repeat intentionally that it's not that we're just trying to get rid of, being blamed. Just live our life so we never get blamed. Live our life so that we're never, maybe if we just live so cautiously so that we're never, maybe, as the word here, like, have a disgraced or seen. Of course, we try not to be. But these things can come to us without any intention. They can come to us also accidentally. I mean, I'm not going to ask people to put their hands up. Okay, I'm not going to do that. But maybe internally, I mean, is there anybody in this room who's never been blamed for something that they didn't do? Maybe. Or being misunderstood. Is there anybody who hasn't, maybe, maybe we've had a really good reputation, and then, we do something, and our reputation is changed. Is there anybody who hasn't felt pain? Of course not. It's impossible. Is there anybody who, that hasn't lost something? Sort of gain and loss. Whether that's loss of material, something material, or loss of something psychological, emotional, loss of friendship, loss of loved ones. And so this is why the Buddha, he said, it's not about dodging it or not experiencing it, but it's developing the heart and mind that can abide when these things blow through, but it's not taking delight in all the positive spectrum and grabbing it and maybe getting puffed up or getting lost. It's that phrase, drunk on happiness. The image that I've used several times here, so forgive me for using an image that it might be overused, is it's like, how many of us have maybe seen or been a child, seen a child or children running around getting really wound up. Maybe it's some sort of party or some sort of gathering where there's lots of kids and they're playing and they're just getting so excited and they're running around and playing and stuff, and you might hear an adult in the room say it's going to end in tears. It's usually the parent that says that. This is going to end in tears. And because we can get lost. We can get lost in joy and the blissful, the delightful we can get. And instead of, we can get out of balance. Now, obviously with children, this is, they're at their age, it's probably, I would say it's easier to do. But we can do that as adults. We don't need to be a child to get lost in the good. Let's say we receive some praise, and so there's nothing wrong with that. I've even heard, a lot of very experienced, very experienced practitioners, spiritual practitioners, refer to wholesome pride. So that instead of, oh no, I have no, you do something well and everything, no, I did nothing, and they push it down, or if they feel pride, no, pride is bad. But there is such a thing, I believe, in wholesome pride. Just, job well done. That was well done. But to not form an identity around it, to be able to take praise, to be able to receive praise and enjoy it. It's enjoyable. It's nice. It's probably going to feel good. But if we get puffed up, if we start to believe in that as who and what we are, instead of just something we've done, which is wholesome, helpful, useful. So this is what the Buddha was pointing to. So we're not grabbing. We're not overly taking delight and holding on to praise. Receiving blame. So some blame can be completely unwarranted. Somebody can either misunderstand how we're being, how we're acting, or something that we've done, or maybe they just it's a mistaken identity or something, and we can be blamed for something. Maybe somebody can even do it maliciously, try to blame us. And so how do we receive that? Does it destroy us? Or can we let it blow through consciousness? However, we need to also, I feel, that before we just kind of, okay, I let this blow through and just, it's okay, not going to do anything, I'm just going to be equanimous, is to consider, to pause, to really pause and say, well, is there anything in this? Like, is there something, just take a real, sober, clear look. So, I'm being blamed for this. I think it's, even if we think it's completely unfounded and undeserved, but to pause and just make sure that we're not brushing it under the carpet or pushing it away in some way, shape, or form. To really consider, and maybe even speak to a Kalyanamitta, a spiritual friend, if we think that there might be something there, that we've got a blind spot, is to check in with somebody that we trust, somebody that we know will actually tell us the truth, and not just tell us what people might think we want to hear, but to really to listen. And so, because sometimes blame is deserved, and we can learn from that. We can learn from our mistakes, and if we're not willing to do that as human beings, this is a hugely lost opportunity. This is a real obstacle to our spiritual growth, and our growth as a true human being. So then we have this second one, this status and disgrace, or sort of, fame. I don't really like the translation myself, the fame, because that has there's a lot of connotations around that, to be famous. But just that sense of a thinking that maybe we have a higher status in some worldly way. So maybe we have there's something that we do. Maybe if we're a working person, with our work, with our job, there might be a certain status around that. Or within a hierarchical situation, but it's just that's a worldly status, which is not real. It's just a creation. It's just an agreement amongst the group of people and our community where we're living, whether it's a community like this, or whether it's a village or a town or a city or a country or whatever. There is maybe a created sense of status. And maybe we do develop a certain level of fame, renown within our sphere of living. And that in and of itself is not a problem. If it's not misused, if it's wholesome for us, wholesome for others, it's not misused. People, I've even heard, one of my teachers once said that, because he was quite well known as a Dhamma teacher, but he was using that skillfully to help people. Like he was using when people would invite him to do things, he wasn't misusing it. He wasn't lost or believing in him as being special or higher than anybody else, but to use his can't think of the right word, but maybe like his platform. That to use that status to help others, to encourage others, and to use the opportunities that he had to introduce other people, or to help them along the path to peace and kindness. And then, as I was saying, the introductory aspect of this sharing this evening, then we might get disgrace, and maybe sometimes deservedly. Maybe we do something which is disgraceful. So what do we do with that? If we do that, how do we handle that? Do we just run away? Do we hide? Do we argue back? Do we try to cover it over? Just wallpaper over the big crack in the wall? Deflect? Do we try to distract? Or do we, if it is real, if it is deserved, do we make amends in the most beautiful way we can? Do we, for instance, there's this lovely ceremony in our tradition of the asking for forgiveness, and we do it certain times a year, kind of as per tradition. But then, also, when we're as an individual, when we're parting company with especially with our elders or our community, and moving on, and do that. But also sometimes if we've made a mistake, something which lands heavy, something that lands a bit heavy, and to go and to that person and do this ceremony. And it's that recognition, oh, yes, that was not well done. That was a mistake, whether it was intentional or unintentional, and to go and acknowledge that, apologize, and not just in a sort of perfunctory way, but really to really take it to heart. And and these formal gestures can be really turned into heart gestures, and not just some sort of ceremony that's in the book that's not using it properly. And so, but yeah, if we're falsely, falling into disgrace, and then try and skillfully maneuver through that, and if we can somehow clarify things, but it's more when it's real that we have to really don't miss that chance to learn from that which we have done, which is disgraceful. Really, there's this, to be able to grow as a human being. And so even the most, and this happens to people, maybe they've just lost, the opposite of this sort of fame and renown is just falling into obscurity. And so if we're identifying with fame and renown and a sense of status or anything like that, and then that status, renown, fame is lost, and if we're feeling a real sense of loss, like believing in that, it's not that we wouldn't feel it necessarily, but the stronger we feel, the more was I identifying with being renowned? Am I identifying with having a certain fame or reputation of something that maybe we have a quality which has been developed that's maybe more exceptional than other people? Are we identifying as being a better person than another person, as somehow being better and more important, more special, and clinging to that? Because it's the clinging here again, the grasping. It's not the experiencing. The Buddha was very well known. He was very famous in his time. He was renowned, and yet he experienced all of these worldly winds. I mean, his cousin tried to kill him 7 times. People blamed him, framed him, tried to set him up, to be blamed for things. Some people didn't like him. They tried to cause disrepute for him, come and argue with him and debate with him and turn people against him. And he was the Buddha. Here he is, a fully enlightened Buddha. How are we going to escape that? So I think it's important to reflect on that. Even the most wholesome examples of a human being can be receive and have those 4 negative worldly winds blow through their experience as a person. So I'm blaming, praising, renown, disrepute, gain and loss as we have. I mentioned earlier, here again at the introduction aspect of this talk, that we all subject to gain and loss. We sometimes things come our way materially. We get material things, maybe money, possessions. And that's gaining on a material level, but it's like gaining friendships, gaining relationships, gaining just getting a job, right? Like we maybe go for a job interview and we want the job, we really want to get it, we might need the job probably, and we get that, it feels good, and then maybe some point in the future we lose a job, we didn't want to lose a job, we get sacked, the company folds, whatever. We lose that, we lose relationships, we fall into a friendship or a romantic relationship, and maybe things change for whatever reason, and we lose that relationship. Losing loved ones, are those who are nearest and dearest to us, that was, of course, a gain very probably early on in our life, not necessarily, but that loss, the loss of a family member, a loss of a dear friend, like one of our friends, close friends of the monastery, was here today and shared that yesterday a really, really close friend of his, for decades, maybe 5 decades or more longer, suddenly passed away yesterday, and just that sense of loss. You're going to feel that. So here again, it's not about not experiencing it or not feeling it, but developing the heart, the equanimous heart and mind, equanimity, to be able to hold these. So I'll touch more on this as I'm closing off this talk in a few minutes. But so it's we're all going to experience all of these. Every human being will experience these. And if we spend our life just shielding ourselves in ways that, or not willing to take a chance with life, not like that expression, very English expression, putting our head above the parapet, the part of the castle up above the castle wall. So you don't want to, because it's a war. I shouldn't be using war war terminology. Sorry, Buddhist monastery, and my name means harmless. But anyway, it's that you don't want to get shot down, and so we do that psychologically. If we're so afraid of being blamed, so afraid of being censored, or so afraid of being hurt. So like the last of the 8 worldly winds is pain and pleasure. And so you can say also happiness and sadness, which are, that's the obvious pain and pleasure psychologically, emotionally. So I know there was a time in my life, when I was, long before I was a monk, because I didn't I didn't join the monastic community until I was in my early 40s, but like I went through a period like with romantic relationships where I just had I was feeling hurt and fragile, and I just was closing myself off because of the fear of pain, which is natural, that shrinking away, but it was it was still an aspect of my life, but that I was not willing to allow to happen because of that fear of being hurt. But like even let's take away that particular example. We could do that in so many ways of our life, just with friendships. If we feel socially I feel a little bit fragile, or I've lost good friends before, and so if we just close ourselves away and not take that chance, to be open. It's that fear of, like, let's use this list of negative, the negative side of this list of 8 worldly winds, just that fear of experience, something that nobody is going to escape anyway. It's like trying to escape death. I mean, every living being dies. That's it. There is no arguing with that. If it's born, it dies. So if we just turning away and can't accept, the obvious, and so that where there's pain, there's pleasure. At some point in our lives, we're going to be feeling that. There's going to be happiness. There's going to be sadness. And so to live in fear, and that's why this term fearlessness, really like that, and it's referred to in various ways in the Buddhist teachings. But it's typically framed around living on the 5 precepts for the lay community. Because if we're living in that way, people won't need to be fearful of us, other people. There's a fearlessness. And I like to flip it around, and also we need not be afraid. Sure, we're afraid of, natural things and buses, and, be afraid of things that can do us harm. But we don't need to be afraid of our own actions when we're living on the 5 precepts. And so that's one way of looking at fearlessness. But this is a different aspect, is, that really, are we just going to live a life so that it's just so in the middle, so protected, so bubble wrapped, that there's not even any chance of somebody praising us. Well, no, I don't want to feel praised because then I might get puffed up, but then again I might get blamed, and just go down the list. And if we just protect ourselves from experiencing these wins, I don't want to get attached to the positive ones. Sometimes people can do that. Just think, I don't want to have anything that I might get attached to. It's not the point. The point is to be able to experience, to endure, to weather these winds, both the positive and the negative, with the equanimous heart and mind. So this is the heart of this teaching. And so then we say, well, how do I develop that? And that's what we were doing tonight, right? Coming together. This is community, right? Of course, we have a resident community, but this is community. Coming together, a unified assembly, unified around kindness, unified around peacefulness, unified around wholesome practices, chanting together. It takes cooperation to do that. It takes letting go to chant together, to not just chant at whatever speed and whatever pitch we want to do, and whatever, we can just be 3 times louder than the chanting leader, and no, and we need to listen, we need to modulate. This is community, this is practice, mindfulness, sitting in meditation, watching the heart and mind, settling, allowing the heart and mind to settle, seeing the obstacles to our well-being, seeing if we're feeling, seeing if we're feeling blamed. So we're using the breath or whatever object of our meditation. That's not, as we keep pointing out as people who share this, that's not the goal. The goal is not deep states of meditation. Those are tools to see the obstacles to our well-being. And so for us to not get overly absorbed or fixated on the tool, to really keep that in mind, that the meditation is being the tool to our well-being and release and awakening. So if even it doesn't have to be 100% settled to be able to, we can be feeling, 24/7. Maybe that feeling, something happened and we're feeling blamed, or we're feeling disgraced, or we're feeling some sort of pain, emotional, psychological, physical. Maybe we're feeling these things, and so by noticing those and not letting them go into suppression or repression, to not be burying them and not allowing them to be noticed, to be felt, to not be just psychoanalyzed and us getting lost in our thoughts about them, because that can just go around in circles. Of course, a certain amount of using the intellect can be very helpful, but to keep it really simple so that we're actually reflecting on the experience of these things. The experience, not what the mind makes of it. Because that's a real rabbit hole for most of us. We can just get lost and we doubtful. And so by noticing, by being steady, by being able to let these winds blow through consciousness, to be seen for what they are. And it's in the suttas, in the the actual teachings that's handed down within our Pali tradition in the canon. It's really looking at here again how to experience them as impermanent, to really see their impermanence, to see their unsatisfactoriness, so that within the three aspects of anicca, dukkha, anatta, so anicca, impermanence, is out of those three, this teaching really focuses on two, which is the impermanent, transient nature of these states that arise from our experience, and then also the dukkha element, the unsatisfactoriness, the discontentedness, the dis-ease, the stress of these things. at least in the sutta I was focusing on today, it doesn't focus on the not self nature, the anatta. So it's really looking at those other. Okay, this is unsatisfactory. This is painful. So another translation into English for dukkha is painful. It's painful, but if we really penetrate, if we can penetrate that transient nature, and then of course the not self nature can be applied to anything. That this is also to not take it personally and think, well, I'm the only. If we start to think that we're a rare being of experiencing these things, but here again, the Buddha emphasized, no, everybody experiences these. Everybody. So it's a shared experience to varying degrees. I mean, we're all going to experience them to on a different level, different strength, and in different ways. So I think that's enough for tonight. It's I just encourage all of us to, if any of this resonates, to reflect on this, within our own life, our own experience of maneuvering our way through this journey of a lifespan. And so I'll close the talk there. I forgot to read something out. Sorry. It's very short. How's that for a mindfulness lapse? So in the version of this, the translation that I was using mostly today, just pondering in my ponderings, is by Ajahn Ahimsako. So he's the American bhikkhu monk, lives in California. His monastery, Wat Metta. And I think many of us know who he is, and he's a very prolific translator. And so I very much appreciate his translation, especially the verse at the end of this particular sutta. And by the way, this sutta, which deals with this, just so people always go, loka vipatti, and that's in the Anguttara Nikaya collection. That's the numerical collection in chapter 8 is 8.6. And so the verse goes, I'll close by this, just reading out this verse. Gain, loss, status, disgrace, censure, praise, pleasure, pain. These conditions among human beings are inconstant, impermanent, subject to change. Knowing this, the wise person, mindful, ponders these changing conditions. Desirable things don't charm the mind. Undesirable ones bring no resistance. His welcoming and rebelling are scattered, gone to their end, do not exist. Knowing the dustless, sorrowless state, he discerns rightly, has gone beyond becoming to the further shore.
And we can finish the evening with chanting page 33, verses of sharing and aspiration in English. Now let us chant the verses of sharing and aspiration. Through the goodness that arises from my practice, may my spiritual teachers and guides of great virtue my mother, my father, and my relatives, the sun and the moon, and all virtuous leaders of the world. May the highest gods and evil forces, celestial beings, guardian spirits of the earth, and the Lord of death, may those who are friendly, indifferent, or hostile, may all beings receive the blessings of my life. May they soon attain the threefold bliss and realize the deathless. Through the goodness that arises from my practice, and through this act of sharing, may all cravings and attachments quickly cease, and all harmful states of mind, until I realize Nibbana. In every kind of birth, may I have an upright mind, with mindfulness and wisdom, austerity and vigor. May the forces of delusion not take hold, nor weaken my resolve. The Buddha is my excellent refuge. Unsurpassed is the protection of the Dhamma. The solitary Buddha is my noble guide. The Sangha is my supreme support. Through the supreme power of all these, may darkness and delusion be dispelled. And closing homage in English, page 29. The Lord, the perfectly enlightened and blessed One, I render homage to the Buddha, the Blessed One. The teaching so completely explained by him, I bow to the Dhamma. The Blessed One's disciples who have practiced well, I bow to the Sangha.